Today, the Greece showdown, Britain orwells on, and China has taken the odd decision to make its censorship legal. Your host is Rick Falkvinger, and this is Liberties Report.
This report is presented by Private Internet Access.
Good evening and welcome to Liberties Report Week 28, 2015, and what a week it's been. The Greek bailout negotiations have taken most of our attention this week, but there's a lot of other things that have been going on we should probably pay a little attention to as well. But first, Greece. The Greek negotiations seem to have landed this Monday, but there's a lot of work still to be done, not the least of which is the Greek parliament needs to approve the bailout plan for the Eurozone. And if Tsipras, the Greek prime minister, is abandoned by his coalition partners, he stands a mere 12 votes from defeat in the Greek parliament. This is not over yet, and this is important because a government will always save itself first. Greek people learned that, unfortunately. They have taken for granted that money in the bank was their money, and they learned that that was not the case the very hard way. A government will always save itself first. As always, Bitcoin users were not affected, and that's why we'll see Bitcoin on the uptick again and again and again until it reaches merchant suitability. And it's going to be the retail merchants that drive Bitcoin adoption past the will of governments. Speaking of which, there was a new Bitcoin version out this week. Bitcoin Core version 0.11 that had specialized functions for Tor. What's it called anyway? And the something onion router. I think it's Tor onion router, isn't it? It's a recursive acronym. Never mind. Which brings us to Britain, where David Cameron is steaming ahead on full alert with his intentions, boneheaded intentions, to ban encryption. Ban encryption altogether. Which coincidentally also means banning Bitcoin. Which coincidentally, now that Bitcoin has specialized Tor support, means Bitcoin won't care in the slightest about that. So, David Cameron and his clueless idea that encryption can somehow be banned is still steaming on ahead full. And this is typical for other parts of the world, that laws are actually made and then completely ignored when they are being boneheaded. We don't see that a lot in Northern Europe, or in Europe in general, that laws are made to be ignored, or that laws are made and everybody realizes that they are just pulled out of thin air and ignore them anyway, as though nobody was expected to do otherwise. But about encryption in Britain, that's kind of different. So we'll see what happens with that. And as usual, Bitcoin users are not affected. It's important to remember here that the GCHQ in Britain, the NSA equivalent in Britain, already has a program called Optic Nerve, which was used to wiretap your web camera. Yes, that web camera. And it admits freely, or rather it admits under leaked documents, that it's seen people talk naked to each other. This is while breaking encryption, and this is what David Cameron wants to do. He wants the ability to see people naked. Quite literally. He wants the ability to intercept people's most private conversations. And I think that would be such a ludicrous narrative, it could even derail his scare of organized crime. It's also noteworthy that this is exactly what certain countries did during the Arab Spring, when revolutions were coordinated over Facebook. They tried to co-opt every Facebook connection and build a mass database of Facebook passwords at the National Security Agency level for their own countries. Facebook co-opted that by actually circumventing any such wiretapping attempts by various means, and this is the ability that David Cameron wants to reinstate for Britain. I think that's very, very grave. At the opposite end of this spectrum is, interestingly enough, China, which has gone all out this week saying it'll now legalize its censorship and its firewall that has been operational for the past decade. China has kind of a special legal system in this way. You're not really expected to be prosecuted if you're breaking the law and not embarrassing anybody. Conversely, if you're not breaking a law but embarrassing people in power, you are construed to be breaking the law. That way, the legal system is very flexible in a way that countries that are ruled by strict rule of law are not very used to. So, in this past week, China has actually gone all out saying that its censorship and its firewall and its ban on certain conversations will now be made legal. And what's most interesting about this is two things. First, making it legal will actually state what Chinese authorities may and may not do with conversations, whereas today they have a carte blanche. And second, it'll remain to see if those authorities care about restrictions anyway. As usual, as they have not done here in the West, and there's no reason they should be believed to have done so anywhere else, given their track record. I'm Rick Falkvinger, and this is Liberties Report. Visit our sponsor, Private Internet Access. Good night.
This report is presented by Private Internet Access.
Liberties Report is produced using exclusively free software.